Man-made disaster. There are some disasters in which we are responsible. And what are those disasters? For example, terrorism. Terrorism is something that a human being is involved. So terrorism is a man-made disaster. Nuclear bombing. Who decides to bomb? Who decides to throw a bomb? Is human beings. So this is another type of man-made disaster. Oil spills. Again, the human being is involved. So when I say terrorism, it can be terrorism, it can be kind of war or a cold war, any kind of fight. So all these are man-made disasters. A man-made disaster is a threat having an element of human intent, negligence or error, or involving a failure. So this is known as man-made disaster. In very simple words, if I am to tell you what is a man-made disaster, any kind of activity which leads to any destruction or loss of property or loss of life or destruction of any kind of settlement or population in which man is involved are known as man-made disaster. Atomic bombing. The first thing that comes to your mind when I talk about atomic bombing is the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombing. And exactly the picture below also shows the picture of the bombing which was done on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The first two bombs were used by the USA to end the war against Japan in 1945. They had a war with Japan. The first one was dropped on Hiroshima with a death toll of around 166,000 people, and this bomb was dropped on 6th of August 1945. There was a second bomb again which was dropped on 9th of August 1945, and this second bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. So there were two cities on which the bombs was dropped, and in the second bomb on the Nagasaki, it had a death of 80,000 people recorded. So one was on 6th and another bomb on 9th was dropped by the USA. And had Japan not surrendered, USA had planned to just continue dropping the atomic bomb until they surrendered. The atomic bombing which was done on Hiroshima and Nagasaki was one of the examples. And this was the only use of atomic bomb which was done by the USA for the first and the last time. And thereafter, we had no other recorded atomic bombing done. Terrorism. Terrorism is another man-made disaster in which the human being is involved, and we get to hear so much about terrorism today. When I talk about terrorism, it is also a kind of civil disturbance that is also called terrorism, any kind of war, any kind of small fight. So everything comes under terrorism. Terrorism is a major threat to society. Its intention is nothing but to disrupt a community. Some examples of terrorism are demonstrations, riots, strikes, public nuisances and other criminal activities. So terrorism is the activity which is caused because of human beings. It is caused because of intervention of human being in order to disrupt a community. On September 11, 2001, 19 militants associated with the Islamic extremist group of Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 airliners and carried out suicide attack against a target in the United States. 2 of these planes were flown into the towers of the World Trade Center in the New York City. And there was a third plane which hit the Pentagon just outside the Washington DC. The 4th plane, it crashed in a field of Pennsylvania. This day is generally referred to as 9/11. The attacks resulted in extensive death and destruction, triggering the major US initiative to combat terrorism. In this recorded act of terrorism, 3,000 people were killed during the attack in the New York City and Washington DC. This also included 400 police officers and other firefighting team members. So this was one of the deadliest terrorist attack and terrorist activity that is ever recorded. The picture also behind shows you the twin towers, and this is how the first twin tower was hit and the second twin tower. Now let's talk about the last man-made activity is the deep water horizon oil spills. Is also referred to as the BP oil spills or the BP oil disaster or the Gulf of Mexico oil spills. The oil spills, it began on April 20th, 2010 in the Gulf of Mexico. It followed for about 3 months without being stopped until it was capped on July 15. There were 11 people which were found missing. It is considered the largest accidental marine oil spill in the history of petroleum industry. They estimated a total discharge of about 4.9 million barrels. After several failed efforts to contain the flow, the well was declared sealed on September 19, 2010. So this was the deep water horizon over oil spill. So these are some of the man-made disasters. So here in today's video, I hope you must have understood what are disasters. What are the two kinds of categories of disasters, that is the natural and the man-made disasters. Now that we know about both the kinds of disaster, there is one thing which is very important for us to understand. Definitely we understood that man is behind all the man-made disasters. But one more thing which we need to understand and look at it carefully is that man is also behind few of the natural disasters. For example, the landslide. How did the landslide take place? The landslide will take place only if there are no trees being planted. If we plant more number of trees, the soil will be tight enough. There will be no loose soil and there will be no loose rocks. Even if we plant the trees on the mountains, in such mountains we will not find any kind of landslide taking place. Only in the areas where the mountains do not have any trees or any greenery planted, generally landslides are expected to occur. So we have to understand that behind some of the natural disaster, it is the root cause is only man and the man's activity. The intervention of human being with the ecosystem or with the environment, is what causes some of the natural disasters. So what is important for us, which we have reiterated in the previous video also, is that we have to conserve our ecosystem. We have to conserve our natural resources, make our earth clean and green earth so that the environment is clean, there is no pollution, and we avoid all these natural and man-made disasters. So thank you for watching Edupedia World videos.